As you can see, I have my screen and I have my towel at the end of the table, and I also have my resist, my satin fabric sewn together so I can utilize being able to put my hand in there to get both sides of the 3D vessel. And then I also have a thicker piece of plastic that can fit into the satin resist to keep the shape of the vessel. Now that we have our resists laid out on top of our screen, we're going to set our 4 layers of roving on top of it. I'm starting with horizontal pieces, or laying in the horizontal direction. Notice that I have about 1.25 inches down from the top, so I don't have any roving up at the top. And then I'm overhanging on the edges, including the bottom, about 1.5 inches. Try to keep your hand carding as even as possible. If you need to fill in some thin spots, you can always pull some roving off and then split it down the middle. And then that way you can fill in those light, thinner spots. Now that I've finished laying my first layer, I'm going to continue to lay the next 2 layers vertically first, making sure to keep it even, and then my third layer will be horizontal as well, still with the overhang on the edge and on the edges and the bottom, and then leaving the top with no fiber. My fourth layer is going to be an accent color, so I am choosing to thin it slightly, to card it slightly thinner. So that way the blue comes through a little bit more than a solid final layer. I am going to do a few accents of a coral color just on top, and now I am ready to begin to felt the piece. You need your Murphy's oil soap and your bottle with holes punched through the top. I am using a Gatorade bottle because it's a bit thicker. I used finishing nails and hammered the top or the lid, so there's a spigot hole pattern on the top. I'm just doing a little bit of Murphy's oil soap, maybe like a half a teaspoon, and then I'm going to fill my Gatorade bottle with almost boiling water. If you don't have rubber gloves, then I would keep your water a little bit cooler than near boiling water because obviously we don't want to burn our hands. You're going to spray the water, again, making sure not to spray anywhere but on your felt piece, and you want to only saturate where the resist is. So I'm going to leave kind of like floofy edges with my roving, and I'm going to press down. Notice that I do have my gloves on. I'm going to press down, keeping the edges dry for now, because when we flip it over we'll get them wet, but I'm just kind of pressing gently, making sure all of my fibers are staying in the space that I put them in, and then just kind of like a really gentle pat to get the water saturated into the fibers. Once your first side is completely saturated, you're going to place the other screen on top, and then you will carefully and gently flip over your piece so the other side of the resist that does not have any fiber laid out on it is facing up. Carefully remove the screen. It wants to catch, or the fiber wants to catch on the screen, so just make sure to do that gently. And now we'll carefully fold the edges from the opposite side over to the back side of the resist. And then we saturate it with water, gently patting down, making sure that the fibers are hugging the resist all the way to the edge to try to keep the shape that we have chosen. When you go around the bottom edge, you kind of have to fold in, but like almost, you're you're almost kind of folding it in on itself and like distributing the excess fibers because it's not going to be able to lay flat. So I kind of have, it kind of looks like triangles when you fold it in, and I'm trying to disperse the excess fibers. So you can see it right there how there's a little fold, and now I'm going to try to push them up towards the top of the vessel to distribute that excess fiber. Do that other side here, get it wet, and then again gently press, make sure that the fibers are hugging the edge of the resist, and then once everything's saturated, we can begin to lay out our layers on this side. We will again do 4 layers. Before we do our 4 layers, I am going to take a piece, hand card a little bit of roving, and I'm going to lay it vertically along the edges because those fibers are now going horizontally, and I would like to start my carding layers in the same manner as I did in the previous side, which was laying horizontally. If I lay horizontal to horizontal, it's not going to want to felt as easily. So you'll see here, I'm going to place a thin layer of roving on the edges vertically to help combat that and encourage the felting from side to side. So it looks like a vertical border around the edge. And now, as you can see, I am beginning to start my 4 layers of roving in the same manner as I did in the previous side. I'm starting horizontal. I'm not putting it all the way to the top edge of the resist, and I do have that overhang. I will build this side in the same manner as I did the other side. So just make sure that you have even distribution of the fibers and you don't have any thin spots. Once you're done with the final purple layer and your accent pieces, you will again go ahead and saturate only the fiber that is touching the resist and leaving the overhang fluffy. Place your screen on top and then again gently flip over. You can see the difference of flipping this side versus the other side. Again, being careful when you take the screen off, making sure the dry fiber does not get caught on the screen. But you can see that we have the one side that already has fiber and it's been saturated with water. We now need to fold our edges in, saturate with water, gently press, and then we'll be able to begin the felting process. I am adding a few pieces of the purple and a few of the coral, just since we had to fold it over from the other side. I just want to make sure the outside of my vessel is evenly distributed with my color. Once your piece is saturated and everything is in place, you can go ahead and put the screen on top, and I'm going to gently press and agitate the fibers pretty softly. I don't have a lot of pressure right now, but I'm doing this like circular motion, and then you can see I check the sides to make sure that my fibers aren't shifting, and I'm kind of rubbing the edges with my thumb and my pinky to keep the shape. And I'm going to continue this on both sides, but I'll pat a little bit, then I'll use my PVC pipe to roll a little bit. Again, gentle pressure because we don't want to push the fibers out of place. I'm just going to remove the screen and check again to make sure that all of my fibers are staying in place. Kind of when I pat, if a fiber has shifted into the wrong direction or uneven, I kind of push it again gently back into place. I'm now going to place the screen back on top, flip it over, and work the piece a little bit similarly to the other side. Notice that I'm adjusting the top edge because I do not want my fibers to creep forward and start felting the top closed. I'm going to add a couple more coral pieces here because things have shifted, and I also want to make sure it's bright enough when the piece dries. These are going to want to pop up a little bit for probably like 5 minutes, so I'll have to gently make sure to keep them in line and get them to adhere to the piece since they're being added at a separate time. So notice I am on the second side. I'm doing that same circular motion with my hand, rubbing the edges, the bottom, the top. You'll probably notice that when you're rubbing in the circular motion that some of the fiber will pop through the screen. That's okay. You can just remove that, get rid of it, and then continue on felting. Again, right now I have very gentle pressure. I'm going to use the PVC pipe again, but I'm not pressing too hard. If your bottle isn't saturating enough, you can use a sponge, and I have warm water to the side with the soap, and I'm just saturating a little bit by squeezing the excess water onto my piece. Again, notice that I'm using my fingertips to adjust small areas of the fiber. Place my screen back on top. And I'm going to grab some bubble wrap, and then I'm going to start rubbing a little bit harder on my vessel with the bubble wrap. The screen and the bubble wrap are creating the agitation with the water and soap, so this is helping getting the fibers to fuse together. So I'm going to continue this process using the screen, my hands, flipping it, the PVC pipe, the bubble wrap, and I'm going to continue to gently work the fibers, both sides like I said previously. I'm also going to make sure that it's not getting too saturated. This process was probably about 20 minutes here in this section of the video. And then once it's stable enough, and by it I mean the fibers, I will squeeze out the excess water, and then I will start to work the piece with my hand inside of the resist. Here you can see I'm using the screen to kind of do circular motions on top, and then I'm going to grab some tulle and I kind of wrap it around my hand, and then I'm gently patting and then doing circular motions here as well to help the fibers felt together. Pushing out the excess water, I'm going to roll this up here. I'm going to get my bucket, and then I'm going to squeeze out the extra water because I'm about ready to start felting the edges. So I will be needing the excess water out of there, and I will be inserting my hand into the resist to be able to work the inside and the outside at the same time and the layers separately. I've got fresh water and soap in my vessel, and I'm now going to resaturate my piece here, and I'm going to test putting my hand into the satin resist I should say, and then I'm going to use the screen to gently rub the side edge, because that's what I need to get, I don't want it to be a crease, right? I want it to be a nice smooth vessel that stands up. So I'm responding to the piece. It might be a little bit soft at this point, so I can use the screen just gently, but I'm going to kind of go back and forth between patting, getting it saturated with the hot water. Remember, you can shock your piece once it's a little bit stable like this. So really hot water, dunk it in a bucket, and then put it into some cold water. When you do that at this point, though, you will want to keep it in the screen. But notice how my hand is inside the satin resist, and I'm patting with both hands, so from the inside and the outside, and I'm patting that side edge, and I will do the same thing to the bottom as well, but I'm just really trying to work that side seam so there isn't a crease when this piece is finished. Again, just patting, trying to work those fibers gently, and right now you can see I'm kind of taking my pinky and my thumb and like moving them to the middle of my hand when they're on the piece, and that's going to help give a little bit more agitation but still being somewhat gentle with this piece. Notice that I flipped over the vessel because we need to work our piece both sides, horizontally and vertically, again with that circular motion. I'm continuing to go back and forth, and just really making sure that I'm not pushing the fibers out of place. I have the bubble wrap again, and then I will actually start to use a bubble wrap on the outside and then put one hand on the inside of the satin resist and then kind of press them together. That's going to be my next step here. So I checked it to make sure that it's stable enough. I'm going to put it to the side so I can put my hand in there a little bit easier. And I'm rubbing with my hand. And again, rubbing that seam. You can use the bubble wrap here as long as your piece is stable enough. I'm going to get a little bit more water here to make sure it's hot. And I'm making a fist inside here to help make the round shape, and then I'm patting with my other hand. And then again, flipping so I can do the opposite resist or opposite seam as well. Notice that I'm using the table as a support for the weight of the piece, because if I had this hanging up in the air, and that's something easily done, I'm gonna, with all the water weight, it's going to want to pull the fibers apart, so that will create holes. So right there, I'm getting the bottom to show you, but again, I'm not going to keep it up there too long because I don't want the weight of the water to create holes. And now I'm putting my vessel vertical, and I have a fist in the bottom, and I'm going to start working the base to create the base, as you see there. I'm going to rub that with the screen as well. You could also use bubble wrap, trying to flatten the piece here so it has a nice stable stand, so when it sits up vertically. So for about 8 more minutes, I'm going to continue to work this again, working the bottom, rubbing it on both sides with my hands. Notice that I remove the resist here because it's stable enough that I can now felt this piece without the resist in there, because I do want to work the inside as well. So I'm patting and rubbing both the inside and the outside at the same time, again shaping the vessel by the agitation with the screen, keeping it hot, and where I put the agitation when I'm utilizing my hand and the screen is how I'm going to shape my piece. So if your piece is starting to get wide at the top, you know, around the rim, I would suggest to rub just the rim area to help shrink that up a little bit. Notice that I grabbed the tool again, and I'm working the outside with the tool or actually it's netting, it's a little bit wider of a mesh. And then my other hand is on the inside, and I'm going to continue to work the bottom. I'm going to shape the piece as well with the screen and the tool, kind of going back and forth between the two tools that I'm utilizing here. And this was probably about another 5 minutes. My piece isn't saturated as much with water, and it's definitely more stable, so having it up in the air is not a huge problem, but just make sure that you're aware of your piece, because you don't want to do that until your vessel is ready or is stable enough to be in the air without making holes from the weight. And now I am just shaping the piece. And you have your vessel. You'll want it to submerge it in about, I would say about 8 cups of water to about a 1/4 cup of vinegar for about 5 minutes to neutralize the soap. Once it's done soaking in there, you can dunk it into some fresh water with no soap, no vinegar, and then squeeze it out. And then you can stuff it with newspaper, leave it to dry, and then once it's dry, remove it, and there you have your 3D vessel.